Good evening. This is a lecture on Nazrul Islam's music, love and mysticism. Nazrul Islam was born in 1899 in today's West Bengal. He was from actually not a very privileged family, although a family with a background that could be called somewhat intellectual. But his childhood was spent in great penury, but he was an indomitable child, it seems, and he studied intermittently, also had to play various roles, including that of a poet-musician in a group called Leto, which was kind of a local village singing, performing group. In order to make a living, he had to do all these things. He also ran away from home and finally ended up joining the army during the Second World War. He spent time in Karachi, today's Pakistan, and he saw no action but learned a great deal about music and about Farsi and Arabic literature from some of the people there. These influences show in his later work. After coming back from the war, he burst into the literary scene of Bengal and then India from 1919 onwards. He was writing some songs during this time, but his musical career really took off from 1928 onwards when he joined the gramophone company. In fact, he worked for several. He was a songwriter, composer, and trainer all in one. He worked with a number of talented people there and composed a great deal of music as well as writing a lot of original lyrics, more than 3,000 in all. So by the count of songs alone, he's probably the most prolific of the songwriters in modern South Asia and probably in the modern world. Not all of these songs, of course, are of equal quality. But at his best, Nazrul shows at least two things. One is the wide range of musical coverage. I have classified actually the range of his musicality into more than 16 categories, running all the way from comic songs to what I call modern, postmodern, spiritual love songs. It is the last category that I will be focusing on today. I will give some other lectures in the future, rounding up the background and blending his poetry and his musical lyrics together. But today I just want to talk about his modern, postmodern songs that deal with human love and also a deep mystical resonance that they have through human love to beyond human love. But before analyzing the blending of what in Bengali can be called Bani and Shur, that is lyrics and melody, and creating overall musical structure in Nazrul Sangeet, that is Nazrul's music, it may be pertinent to say a few words on the gayaki or the singing performing style of Nazrul Sangeet. Nazrul allowed a great deal of freedom in improvisation to the brilliant artists who surrounded him in the most productive phase of his life, that is during the late 1920s, 1930s. However, it is doubtful that he would have allowed the license that young singers and composers in both Bengals and outside are now taking. Now that the reader and the listener for this lecture is familiar with the great range of musical ideas and forms in Nazrul Sangeet, it is easy to appreciate the argument that just like in Tagore songs, and Western art songs. A long period of training, starting with the basics of voice control, breathing, projection, etc., all the way to expressing the subtleties of rags and tals is part of this necessary training. It is a good idea to standardize the lyrics and melodies by following the best practices in musical hermeneutics. But there is a danger of Nazrul Sangeet becoming fixed and formulated with mechanical following of notations by mediocre artists, even leaving aside the low politics that always accompanies institutionalization everywhere in every subject. A second type of danger comes from commercialization. It is relevant here to paraphrase the observations and unease in the case of Rabindra Sangeet of Subhash Chaudhary, a true lover of Tagore's music, who was trained in Shantiniketan. The songs of Rabindranath are now nothing but commodities to some. They are finding ways to make these more sellable in the market. If they truly cared about the musical qualities, they would not have treated art as a commodity. One group sings the popular recorded songs. Another group shows its high status by singing Shastriya Rabindra Sangeet. Some, in their bid to become extraordinary, are introducing difficult and rare tals. Another group capitalizes on rare Rabindra Sangeet. Yet another group recasts Rabindra Sangeet in so-called modern, postmodern format. It does not take much reflection to realize that what applies sadly to the current state of Rabindra Sangeet in some quarters also applies to Nazrul Sangeet mutatis mutandis. It will become even more frighteningly real with the current trends for the wrong kind of institutionalization of Nazrul Sangeet. It is important to realize this early on and look for both more competence and flexibility in the institutionalization of Nazrul Sangeet that has been sadly the case for Rabindra Sangeet so far. I now turn to an analysis of some Adhunik, Uttaradhunik, that is modern, postmodern Nazrul songs, and here a word of clarification is in order. In my earlier work, I have argued that Nazrul actually was not only modern in his own way, in his independent way, free from the influence of too much Western education, especially romantic influence. He had a romanticism on his own that he invented and that was connected with the people from bottom up in Bengali and Indian cultures. But he was also postmodern in the sense that he invented a connection with the multitude, the ordinary people. He actually connected with the long subaltern past in the history of the Indian subcontinent and Bengal in particular. He was also influenced by what we might call the Lokayata darshan, or the philosophy of ordinary people from the lower classes and their spiritualities that received expression in musical and other forms. I could elaborate on this further, but today I will simply confine myself to some of these songs and illustrate the points, perhaps not completely, but at least enough for our understanding, and leave it at that. The first song I have chosen will illustrate some problems in research on authentic lyrics and melodies as well as composers. In the song, Bheshe Ashe Shuduro Sritiro Shurobhi, the fragrance of faraway memories come floating in the air, is based partly on the evening rag Purbi, but the notations published by the poet's son Kazi Narzul, does not indicate any rag identifier. The Nazrul Institute volume edited by the Sudhin Das gives the name of the composer as Nitai Ghatak. This version too does not identify the rag. That is perhaps the best, since the song is really along the lines of overcoming both an imported modernity and rigid tradition. This song starts in Nishad, going through Sa and Ga to Tibra Madhyam and Pancham in Untitled Islam's version. The version edited by Sudhin Das mentions the source as HMV record number 27374. It starts with one significant difference. The opening notes are Sa and Mandra Saptak Nishad in the first beat of the 8-beat Tal Kaharva. The Ga Pa Mid is quite important in both versions, but Sudhin Das's version also indicates Komal Rishabh and Shuddh Gandhar and Ma Pa Mids as well. In the Antara section, it rises to higher Gandhar with Mir in Re Sa, coming down to a Mir in Gandhar and Komal Rishabh. The recollection of loss without bitterness is the dominant theme, supported by these musical motifs without any Shastriya rag-based improvisation. In Sandhya Mukherjee's rendition, the earliest I was able to find, the last double question, Tahara Kuthai, Aj Tahara Kuthai, where are they all? Where are they all today? Is repeated without going back to the sthai part. This is a wonderful example of Nazrul's innovative lyrics that combine the pathos of love with a mystical quest beyond bitterness or ordinary happiness. However, this is not yet Nazrul, the composer. Therefore, let us turn to a song where both the lyrics and the melodic lines are by Nazrul himself. This second song, Kobi Shabar Kotha Koile Ebar Nijer Kotha Kaho. O poet, you have spoken of everyone else. Now tell your own inner story. Here the delicate use of kan or sparsha swaras is very important, as are the use of mirs and murkis. Without any indications of rag, it starts on Rishabh and uses both the Gandhars. There are delicate uses of Panchams and Madhyams as Kwanswara going to Kotha, perhaps the most important single word in the lyric. It uses this Rishabh in also another way as Kwanswara on Ko of Koile, where the main note is Sa. The delicate mir involving Komal Gandhar Madhyam and Rishabh with Madhyam as a Kwanswara gives expression to the hidden turbulence in the poet's heart. It is impossible to describe completely the extensive uses of mirs and other alamkaras by the composer to bring out the hidden expressiveness of the lyrics. But the uses of Kwanswaras and mirs in the last line, Tumar hashi teje mashi baje sheto tumi nao, is worth remarking on. Starting on Pancham, the melody here does not rise above Dhaivat, but what is distinctive is the subtle mir from Sa to Pa and the three Kwanswaras Pa, Ma, Ga used quickly with the Madhyam in articulating the syllable mi of the word tumi. The poet who brings joy and laughter burns silently within, and this can only find expression in the beautiful pathos of the music within that gives rise to an equally deep and delicate music for the others outside. So maybe the best way to illustrate this is to sing a few lines of the song. সবার কথা কইলে এবার নিজের কথা কহ কবি, সবার কথা কইলে এবার নিজের কথা কহ। So you can see how he is using the mirs and the sparsho swaras here. And in the Sanchari part, which comes after the first antara, this actually is a very delicate use of the kaharba tal. Tal is the same, but the use is much more delicate, starting on pancham and moving on to komal dhevat. Kun chando moir chando dole tomar gane gane. Kun chando moir chando dole tomar gane gane. Tomar surer স্রোত বয়ে যায়, তোমার সুরের স্রোত বয়ে যায়, কাহার প্রেমের টানে গো, কাহার চরণ পানে. So you can see how he uses the notes actually to find the right pathos for this extraordinary song. We don't have time to go into many more of his songs, but let me just compare two songs. One of them set actually in the rag Pilu. The other one is based on rag Pilu, but is not really sung in the classical style, and in my view goes much farther in connecting the body-centered love, human love, with a love beyond. The one that is based on Pilu and Tal Dadra, which is a 6-beat Tal, is an earlier one. Shureo banir mala diye tumi amare chhuiya chile. You touched me with a garland of melody and words. It starts on Gandhar and Madhyam and then goes to Pancham and Komal Dhevat. Shureo banir mala diye tumi amare chhuiya chile. Shureo banir mala diye tumi amare chhuiya chile. Onurag kum kum dile dehe mune. অনুরাগ কুম কুম দিলে দেহে মনে, বুকে প্রেম কেন নাহি দিলে, আমারে ছুঁইয়াছিলে। সুরে ও বাণীর মালা দিয়ে তুমি আমারে ছুঁইয়াছিলে। So this is pure Pilu. There are no extra notes there, but of course the artist is free to improvise as long as the mood of the song is kept. But the last song that I want to mention is called Amar Aponar Cheye Apon je jan khunji tare ami aponai. I search for the one in myself who is more of myself than I myself am. So this is actually quite deep. It's a way to use one's own body and heart, especially the heart, to go beyond the ego, to become egoless, as it were. It is, to me at least, it is one of the deepest songs Nazrul or anyone else in the history of art songs in the world ever wrote. It reminds me of the final song in Heine's famous song cycle, Dichterliebe, A Poet's Love, but Nazrul manages in an amazing compression to combine all stages and phases of love described in all 16 songs of Heine, and does as well as Schumann did melodically. Of course, because of the lack of a tradition of orchestral composition, we do not know if and how Nazrul may have collaborated with the music director in that department. But unlike Tagore, he did not show aversion in practice to creating interesting and complex harmonies and counterpoints to go with the melody. Tagore supported harmony in theory but did not show much interest in practice. Although Nazrul's composition here has some affinity with Rag Pilu, as I have mentioned, he transcends the light and lilting quality of Pilu easily by introducing grace notes and mirs that traverse a different musical territory and ultimately transcend the limits of both tradition and modernity. The composition of the Antara, Sanchari and Abhog show an originality that exceeds even the previous virtuosity of Nazrul. The melodic variations match perfectly the sense of longing and the resonances of images, such as the bird thirsty for love and transcendence in the immanence of love. The beauty of the black deity, Krishna, blends lyrically and musically with the dark clouds of the rainy season. At the end, we are left with a profound ontological truth that Heine also discovered at the end of Dichter Liebe, that deep longing for union in love leads us ultimately to the infinite in our own deeper selves. Finding the infinite in one's own heart through music and thereby overcoming one's own small self's finiteness, that is the mystical musical quest. For someone like Nazrul, love in its many manifestations was not only an instrument for, but really the ultimate constituent of mystical realization beyond ordinary language through the amazing combination of lyrics and music. And let me just give you a little snippet of this song that I just spoke so prosaically about so far. Amar Aponar Cheye Apon je jan khuji tare ami aponai. Amar Aponar Cheye Apon je jan khuji tare ami aponai. আমি শুনি যেন তার চরণের ধ্বনি, শুনি যেন তার চরণের ধ্বনি, আমারি পিয়াসী বাসনায় আমার আপনার চেয়ে আপন যে জান খুঁজি তারে আমি আপনায়। আমারি মনের তৃষিত আকাশে কাঁদে সে চাতক আকুল তিয়াসে। আমারি মনের তৃষিত আকাশে কাঁদে সে চাতক আকুল তিয়াসে। কভু সে চকর চিত চোরাসে, কভু সে চকর চিত চোরাসে। নিশীথে স্বপনে জোছনায় আমার আপনার চেয়ে আপন যে জান খুঁজি তারে আমি আপনায়। আমার মনের পিয়ালো তামালে হেরি তারি স্নেহ মেঘ শ্যাম। অশনি আলোকে হেরি তারে ধীর বিজলি উজালো অভিরাম। আমারি রচিত কাননে বসিয়া পরাণ প্রিয়ারে মালিকা রচিয়া। আমারি রচিত কাননে বসিয়া পরাণ প্রিয়ারে মালিকা রচিয়া। সে মালা সহসা দেখিনু জাগিয়া, সীমানা সহসা দেখিনু জাগিয়া, আপনারি গলে দোলে হায় আমার, আপনার চেয়ে আপন যে জান, খুঁজি তারে আমি আপনায়। Well, another great Bengali composer, Anupam Ghatak, put this journey of the soul through music most beautifully. I paraphrase him. Melody brought ideas and emotions. Ideas and emotions were expressed in special poetic language, and this poetic language invited further musical expression. This circle of music and lyrics made both more and more subtle. Thus, we took the path towards the eternal. Only our heart can know if music is from the soul. Music from the soul is the music of self-surrender. This proceeds in at least 3 ways. First, from the depth of heart, it rises upward, seeking the soul. Second, it makes our sad world a bit more beautiful and joyfully sad. Finally, it returns to an expanded self and soul. This is probably as good a way to sum up Nazrul's great achievement in lyrics and musical composition as any other more comparative ways. Nazrul's aesthetics, love and mysticism at their best are not separate. But Nazrul, like Tagore, refined and gave further edge to both the inherited classical and the popular cultural expressions. Through his assimilation of several different tendencies and the sheer force of his genius, Nazrul managed to create a whole new dimension in Bengali lyrics and music that went beyond both the earlier modernities in Bengali vocal music. Therefore, in a deep historical and anti-imperialist sense of a remarkable renaissance and synthesis, Nazrul, together with Tagore, was among the first 2 post-colonial, revolutionary, postmodern musicians of Bengal, even in a colonial and modernist environment. This makes his and Tagore's achievements all the more impressive, indeed astonishing, given the limits imposed by both colonialism, imperialism, and modernisms on their contemporaries. Nazrul was indeed a new kind of mystic and lover who arose ultimately from the souls of the multitude and the depth of the mystical traditions of Sufi Islam, popular subaltern Hinduism and Buddhism, mixed with Bengali Shahojiya cultural inheritance. He was both a product of the long historical inheritance from many centuries before him and the clash between European modernity and contemporary anti-colonial Bengali sensibilities. Thank you.